So, ladies and gentlemen, I am so excited to present this module to you because I feel as though this was most certainly a massive gaping hole when it came to. I don't know why that sounds. I want to wait. Let me think about a way to rephrase that. This was a need that was. Look, point is, this should have been an agency incubator, but it wasn't, and that's because I have a strong rule. If I have not personally done something myself, right, as in like clicked around, done it, tested it, etc., then I won't teach it. And that's just a personal rule of mine. I know some people, don't like to prescribe to that. Just the way that I've always done things, right? So in order to present today's module as well as the one following this, I had to roll up my sleeves and put myself in a very uncomfortable situation and learn something that I had been neglecting for years and years in order to teach it to you today. So with no further ado, let's get straight into today's LinkedIn module. Ladies and gentlemen, today we are going over LinkedIn 101. So ladies and gentlemen, in today's teaching, we are going to go over the importance of LinkedIn, how to optimize your profile, joining LinkedIn groups, creating content, engaging, re-engaging, content schedule, as well as how to spark intrigue in prospects. Now, as I said, this is a slightly unusual module for me because everything that I teach in this program, I have done personally myself for at least months and months in extended periods. I mean, even things like cold calling in Q1 of 2018, in the first ever variation of this agency program, what was known as Six Figure SMA, actually my appointment setter, Esteban, he was the one who taught all of the cold calling modules. And I just felt like, look, of course, it's fine because I mean, he was literally my appointment setter for 5 months, I think. So this dude was an expert at it, but I felt as though, I know I still had this like gut feeling of like, look, I need to learn this thing myself. So even cold calling, I actually spent a couple months and assigned a few hours a week to doing cold calling and learning cold calling. So as I said, this is really a topic where I just had to dive right into it. And I'm very, very lucky where, because of this education platform, I was actually able to reach out to a lot of students who I knew they were experts at LinkedIn, get some advice from them, apply it, go in the trenches, get some advice from them, get some advice from some of my other buddies who I know are killing it, some of their other B2B businesses using LinkedIn. So I get a kind of a scope for outside of just traditional SMA agency world, how do, some of the top dogs, some of the top insurance companies, some of the top B2B consultancy firms, like how do they actually use LinkedIn in order to get clients? And with all that being said, I still don't use LinkedIn, right? And I think at the end of the day, you need to find because I'm going to give you guys a bunch of different options in terms of different outreach methods and in terms of ways to get clients. And then from there, you can choose what works for you. As I said, at my agency, we get 8% of our clients through ads. Before that, it was all cold Loom and video audits. But with that being said, that sounds like a very negative or pessimistic start to this LinkedIn module. Question is, why would we use LinkedIn? Because LinkedIn is a very, very powerful tool. Well, there are multiple reasons. And the first of that being that LinkedIn is, at the end of the day, by far the world's biggest directory of business owners and people in the world of business, right? It's about as close as it gets to like a social media app for business owners, right? A place for people to connect with the understanding that, hey, we're here to do business. And as I said, it's not only limited to just business owners, it's business owners, employees, people who have just come out of college. Like really what it is, it's this massive spider web. And through people's connections with each other, through people's work experience, you can really get an understanding of pretty much, as I said, if they actually use LinkedIn, of pretty much anyone's work experience and their work background. It's very, very powerful. Now, the second reason is because unlike, Instagram or Facebook, where there's 101 different distractions, and, the very DNA, the fabric of those platforms is not specifically for business. At the end of the day, as I said, Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, these are all super powerful platforms, and you can find other business owners. But it does come down to the fact that, look, if you're sick, you go to a hospital. If you're hungry, you go to a restaurant, right? And if a business owner wants to be entertained, they'll go on Instagram and look at some cat videos. But if they want to do business, for the most part, they go on LinkedIn. So that means when you're speaking to someone on LinkedIn, you're not invading their email or their phone. You're catching them in a state of mind where they're thinking about business. And granted, there's some industries out there and some niches out there where typically the business owners don't spend too much time on LinkedIn. For example, like, dentists, right? But a lot of business consultants most certainly do spend a lot of time on LinkedIn. So whilst this is an incredibly useful tool, the other important thing is make sure that for your ideal niche, LinkedIn is a place that they're hanging out. And that's, one of the reasons why I also personally don't use it. Not too many of my e-commerce clients spend much time on LinkedIn, if I'm being entirely honest. Especially because for me and my agency, I actually have an ideal client. I have an ideal client in mind. And for me, I actually don't like clients who are above the age of 40. So usually my clients are anywhere from like 23 to like 35. I find usually that's the main demographic. So, think about all this stuff before you dive straight into LinkedIn. Like all outreach methods, you got to figure out, what's going to give me the best bang for buck. Now let's get started with your LinkedIn profile. Now, I'm not going to go into the details of how to create one because you probably have one that you started in school or, that you've long forgotten about. But what I'm going to talk you through is something called profile optimization. And when I say optimization, I don't mean just, making it look better. I mean in the same vein as search engine optimization or, for example, like conversion rate optimization. There are actual techniques you can use to make your profile rank more highly. And this is important even if, like me, you don't use LinkedIn, right? As I said, I don't use it, but at the end of the day, 90% of the time, your LinkedIn profile will rank for your name on the first page of Google. So when you're performing outreach and people Google your name, and by the way, they will, you want to make sure your profile looks and reads well. Now, the good news is that there are some hard and fast rules for your profile and priorities. Now, if you head over to the plug and play section and you'll find all the plug and plays for this video. And by the way, I go in immense detail there. Okay. In the main video, I'm trying to give you some of the high level overviews. But as I said, I've gone in immense details within those plug and plays. So as I said, if you go to the plug and play section, you'll see a full breakdown of these. But the most important ones are these three. So let's start off with design. This is a simple win, but so many people forgo it. The majority of LinkedIn profiles don't even have a cover photo. So you've instantly granted yourself free real estate for you to advertise your agency and an easy win to make a good impression. Next, and I know it sounds so simple, but make sure you have an up-to-date, high-quality photo. Not one that's, kind of like zoomed in and pixelated from a crowd or you at a party. Make it look nice and make it look approachable. And that's definitely something I struggle with. I actually had a really tough time finding a good LinkedIn profile photo because for some reason, I just don't really ever smile in photos, right? So just find one where you've got an approachable looking expression on your face and you're like, okay, you know what? That's the sort of person I would, maybe go up to at an event or something. Then you have your profile headline. Now, if you're in need of some light relief and amusement, I suggest going on LinkedIn right now and just look at the people who run SMMAs. You'll start to notice a pattern extremely quickly. 90% of these profiles use some variation of, I help people in this niche to do this. Ladies and gentlemen, it's so incredibly cliche and one you need to avoid. Instead, you need to do two things. First of which being, use one or two keywords or phrases. And you can actually, I went ahead and compiled a full plug and play for this. And by the way, ladies and gentlemen, as always, you can find this plug and play right below. And it'll just go ahead and open up in a separate tab. And the second is use a friendly and clear description of who you are. Now, if you run an agency, then describe yourself as the founder. Never use the word CEO. And put simply the things your agency does. If you run Facebook ads, say that. If you do email marketing, make it clear. Finally, it's time for the profile summary. Now, ladies and gentlemen, here's mine. You can head over to my LinkedIn, or a lot easier, just pause this if you want to read it in full. But here are some key takeaways you need to include in yours. The first is to get straight to the point. I say I own a marketing agency. I don't make any ludicrous claims about it because this isn't an advert. Okay, LinkedIn is a place for professionals, and I've put my cards on the table and let people know why I'm there. Next, I explain what we do as an agency. And you can see that by doing this, I include multiple words like funnels, PPC, and CRO. Then I show a quick and easy to understand case study. This establishes my credibility and lets people know the standard of work we provide. Now, don't worry if you don't have this yet, but if you can include a case study, go for it. Now, what I actually went ahead and did was just, I put our track record, how much we've spent. And I actually need to update this. This is quite old by now, but I give some of our stats, how much we spent, how much revenue we generate. And this actually pulled directly from our website. And, one thing I always like to laugh about is, we only offer one service, paid traffic. Now, granted, we advertise on multiple channels for our clients, but at the end of the day, the only thing we do is we run ads for clients, paid traffic, and we have no offices. Now, after this, I slip in a bit of personality. This is an extremely calculated ploy by me. Remember, I've got some incredible watches in my collection, but instead I chose to share one that's quite charming. I'm not talking here about a 200,000 pound Richard Mille that I own, but instead one of my cheap vintage watches, right? This is an easy way of people sparking up conversation with me. If a potential client saw this, it would be easy for them to spark up a conversation around this watch. Now, obviously, you don't want to get too personal, but a little flair of personality, like the football team you support or your favorite brand of herbal tea is a great icebreaker. So, for example, another thing that I might put in my bio is can commonly be found in a cigar lounge clutching a Cohiba Siglo 4 and reading a book from Ayn Rand. Right? That's one of my favorite authors, right? It's just anything you can to inject a bit of personality. So many people forget that bit. Now, finally, I've included twice a call to action for people to look at a case study on my website. Whilst few people will actually do this, right, because you can't hyperlink in the profile summary, it makes sense to include the URL. For obvious reasons, I'm not included my personal email or any other way to get in touch with me, but obviously you can do this in your profile. Ladies and gentlemen, as I said, I went ahead and made a very detailed plug and play you can find below. And I've given you some amazing examples right here. So you can see like, for example, obviously with me, it's, I have a lot of leverage that I can use, right? But here's how I would do it if I didn't have any insane case studies or this or that. So as I said, these plug and plays are available for download right below this video. Next, we get to content. Now, once again, I'm going to stress to you guys that I don't post content on LinkedIn because in the same way that if you are going to pick a channel to focus on, you should really double down on that, right? If you've picked cold email or if you picked, cold blooms or you picked this or that, once you find one that really works for you, you should just double down on it. And also the thing is, LinkedIn really is almost like, building up a niche personal brand. It's something that you get. I mean, I guess kind of like everything in life, but especially you get out of it what you put in, right? So for me, as I said, after 5 years of running my agency, we already know what works for us in terms of generating leads. And as I said, that's ads, stuff that we talk about in copy-paste agency, and stuff that I really don't recommend until you're making 10 or 15 grand a month. So the reason I say all this is because I don't want you to watch this module, get super excited, and then just half-ass it, okay? LinkedIn is a commitment, and like everything, you get out of it what you put in. So now, what content should we post on LinkedIn? And why should we even post content on LinkedIn? Now, there's 3 reasons. The first and foremost is credibility. Remember, so much of sales and outreach is just micro communication. So if someone goes on, if a prospect goes on your profile and they see that you've got very insightful content, and apart from that, kind of like we talked about in the profile funnel, you have a bit of a reputation and you've actually got great engagement and people are commenting this is insightful, or even, as I said, one of my favorite things to do when it comes to profile funnel stuff, which LinkedIn, really that's what it is, right? Is all the stuff that we talked about in the profile funnel module. It's just now you're actually the medium in which you're distributing that message is via LinkedIn. A lot of times, I think most people lack the personal touches, right? Talking about stuff outside of business where people genuinely want to engage and spark conversation and this and that. So as I said, the main reason that we post content is credibility. Next is to actually engage with your prospects. Look, it's all well and fine having these connections, but what's more powerful is if you can engage with them. And yes, of course, you can do that through the container of personal messages, but it's very powerful, even if you can respond back to comments that you receive on your posts, you actually comment on their posts. And as I said, it's a real way for you to kind of build a community and really start to engage with prospects. And finally, posting content, if you do it right, gives you an opportunity to start getting inbound or at least very warmed up leads, right? As I said, exactly like we talked about in the profile funnel module, content and inbound marketing, it's a slow burn to start off with. But once the wheels get greased, things really start to flow and it starts to become a legitimate long-term source of leads for your business. So what makes good LinkedIn content? Well, first things first, for me, there's 2 questions you got to ask yourself. The first thing is is this something that you would email to a friend or send them on WhatsApp, or something that you would maybe even bring up in conversation? Is it genuinely insightful, interesting, makes you think? Or is as I said, sparks conversation. It may even be a question to your audience, or even just a comment you have on current affairs. Definitely stay away from politics or stuff that are quite intense when it comes to current affairs, but just your opinion on certain stuff that's going on. So as I said, the first barometer is it genuinely useful, insightful, sort of noteworthy, or is it, and as I said, you have to be very careful, especially on LinkedIn, how you do this. Is it something that's entertaining or engaging, something that sparks conversation? So let's take a look at a couple of posts to put these to the test. Now, obviously, this is an exaggerated example of a bad LinkedIn post, but it's one I wanted to share with you because I found it within 2 or 3 scrolls of my newsfeed. Now, this would be considered pretty horrific content anywhere, but on LinkedIn, it's especially abhorrent. And obviously, it doesn't pass the test. I mean, you would not send this to your family or friends. and your colleagues wouldn't find it useful, nor is it particularly entertaining or thought-provoking or this, that. Posts like these are filler and are actually worse than posting nothing at all. And that's the funny thing is a lot of times people post content and you especially see brands do this all the time. People post filler content, and at that point, it's just better that you don't even post any content. Now, let's look at another example, okay? Let's compare it to this. I will say, generally, I'm against statistics because, let's be honest, like 99% of the time, no one gives a fuck, right? But this person has actually found a pretty compelling one that's relevant to their industry and one which passes the test. It's interesting enough to share with friends and family, or maybe some of your boring friends, and it's something you'd share with colleagues, associates, this, that. And outside of that, they're also adding value by offering 3 takeaways, which ingeniously you have to click see more to read. So there's kind of like that strong hook of the statistic at the top, but then outside of that, they have their own personal takeaways. So a lot of times you can grab stuff that you see from other places and just add some of your own insights to it. Now we've got 2 more examples here. One is a great illustration of Tesla's income streams. Now the person who made this post didn't even make this infographic. As I said, they've just used it and given credit. It's a genuinely interesting and insightful post. Now, on the right is a really interesting example of a pattern interrupt. Now, if you've ever scrolled through, for example, like your Instagram feed, then you've noticed a majority of posts are actually like screenshots from something else. Or for example, like you'll see it on Instagram feed or maybe even Facebook or Insta story. Like a lot of times they'll actually just take a screenshot from another platform. Or even on Twitter, they'll just screenshot something from Facebook, and they just kind of cross-pollinate. So really, it's a little mentally jarring. And I mean, it's a pattern interrupt, so it tends to work quite well. So if you're ever looking to create a graphic or get a point across, I recommend actually writing it on a piece of paper if your handwriting isn't horrific, like mine, mine's terrible. And you can actually take a picture of that and post it, right? Because it's another pattern interrupter. Maybe you can even type it and hold it up, right? And then take a little selfie. So that way it's still readable. These are just some ideas. So that way it's not just like your standard infographic or fact or this or that. Now there's one more thing you need to understand about content on LinkedIn. Unlike, for example, Instagram, which is very clever, it looks at, did you take this photo directly on the Instagram app? Did you take it on your phone? Was it like airdropped over? Like literally like all this stuff, right? It will look at who liked your photo, how many followers do they have, right? It will look at obviously the speed at which the amount of comments you get. It will look at who shared it with who, how many people saved, 101 different metrics. LinkedIn's a little bit more clunky. And of course, by the way, no one knows the true algorithm, but all roads kind of point to on LinkedIn. The biggest thing they're looking at is the first 15 minutes. How much engagement does it get in the first 15 minutes? So especially when you're first starting, you want to get the ball rolling, send it to friends, family, other agency owners in this community, and just get them to like, comment, and instead really bring up that engagement, especially in the first 15 minutes. Now let's talk about LinkedIn groups because they're not exactly revolutionary, and really there's no difference between them and Facebook groups, but they are a good way to interact with people in a certain industry or niche. Now, let's say you're working in the car dealership niche or with automotive accessories. Now, this is the result from a quick search I did on LinkedIn. As you can see, these are all UK, a relatively small market, and yet there are loads of examples of groups dedicated to the automotive industry, or more specifically, even digital marketing within it. Finding and joining groups is relatively easy. You just search either keywords or a location that are relevant to your niche, and you just type that in the top bar, and then you just filter by groups. But one thing to bear in mind is LinkedIn actually only lets you join a maximum of 100 groups, and it also limits how many requests you can send. So just bear that in mind. Now, once you're inside the group, once again, really just apply the same principle as that profile funnel module. You want to get a lay of the land first, right? You want to understand, who are the sort of thought leaders in the group, and who created the group, and most of these groups have rules and like I don't want to say regulations, basically just like rules to follow, right? So really you want to make sure you're not posting any explicit promotional content. Be in there, engage for a few days, get to know people, so that way people know who you are. And as I said, the big thing is don't go posting what you posted that way on your that day on your personal LinkedIn profile, also in the group, okay? Like give it some time or cross-pollinate or take something from 7 days ago and post that on a group. And then, on your personal one, post, a new specific one that you created just for that day. Really, as I said, just apply all of the same principles that we already talked about in the profile funnel module here. And ladies and gentlemen, that brings us to the end of the module. So action step for today is I want you to run through all the plug and plays down below this video. I said there should be 4, and just implement all of the techniques. The way that I built out Agency Navigator for the most part is I tried to keep everything sort of high level because, it's funny because I've always thought, I wanted to make my modules as long as humanly possible. And, granted, we have like 50-minute modules and hour-long modules in this program. But over the years, I've started to get the feedback like, hey, if it could be done in 15 minutes, I'd rather the module's 15 minutes rather than 35 minutes and just having more fluff, especially if all of that sort of fluff or a lot of the detail can be put in the plug and plays. So on that note, there should be 4 plug and plays down below. I put a lot of time and effort into every single one of them. Enjoy them. And I will catch you guys in the next module.